Growing up with the stigma that animation is only for children, I sought out media that defied that notion. Like adult comedies from the US, violent action-packed anime from Japan, and even European art house films. Yet something always felt missing: animated content from my own country. As a Lebanese person, I was disheartened by the lack of adult animation, or animation in general, in the MENA region. That's why when an Arabic language animated film targeting a mature audience was released, I was hyped. That film is Alephia 2053. Alephia 2053 is an animated dystopian thriller set in the year 2053, in a fictional Arab country ruled by a hereditary authoritarian regime. The film stands out as a bold and groundbreaking piece of media in the Arab-speaking world. You see, since the very start of Arabic animation... Okay, I know this sounds like...
I'm going to explore why SpongeBob is a really good show. Part 1. Early cinema.
But trust me, it helps give context to the overall state of animation in the region. Since the very start of Arabic animation, which could be traced back to Egypt in the 1930s with the Frankel brothers pioneering short animated films using celluloid technology, development in the medium was sparse across North Africa and the Levant between the 1950s and 1980s, with productions being limited, artisanal, or tied to state propaganda in its early days. With the dawn of the 1990s, global trends in 3D animation began to influence Arab creators. Yet, due to technological and financial constraints, development remained slow and fragmented. But in the 2000s, the rise of thematic children's satellite channels like Spacetoon and NBC3 fueled demand for Arabic animation. However, the medium was still largely seen as children's entertainment. Also, Arab broadcasters preferred importing Western and Japanese cartoons and dubbing them into Arabic, which stunned the growth of local creative industries. That said, there have been more notable animated films in more recent years, such as Bilal in 2015, which was a landmark feature produced in the UAE, and Masamir the movie in 2020, which was a Saudi production and the first Arab homegrown animation to reach a global platform like Netflix. Government and academic institutions paid little attention to animation as an art form or cultural vehicle, with very few animation programs existing in universities. That brings us to Lebanon. It's a small country, and filmmaking here is generally not profitable, especially if the focus is solely on domestic box office. As a result, most local films tend to be low-budget, commercial, and disposable in nature. However, there are rare exceptions, such as The Insult in 2017 and Kafarnaum in 2018, which were made with the intent of reaching a global audience and achieving critical acclaim. And with live-action films already being such a financial risk, animated films are almost entirely out of the question.
If you understand 2D animation, it's so demanding, it's physically demanding, it's time consuming, so each project is taking us like ages, especially that you don't have the resources in Lebanon. You have now in like Alba and some universities they teach animation, but it's on a very basic level. So to find a team to help you do that, it was like a big thing to do. So you either have a lot of money to execute a project and to have the work outside, or you don't have the money, you have to do it with like 3 or 4 people, and it will end up taking like ages.
That's not to say that there haven't been any animated projects, there were plenty, but they were mostly small TV segments aired between shows and during news broadcasts, with the rest primarily consisting of commercials.
That was really bad.
However, in 2018, the industry was about to have a historical release, with the very first full-length animated Lebanese film.
أنا ميم.
شو؟ أنت الميم يلي كل العالم عم تحكي عنه؟
نعم.
سمعتوا آخر خبرية من طنطة الأشرفية.
Okay. Alwan Beirut, which literally means Colors of Beirut, is definitely a movie. Yeah, it's a film. More accurately, it's a family-friendly fantasy adventure aimed at preschoolers, intended to educate them about local culture through colorful imagery. Yes, the animation looks cheap, because Well, it was. Well, if you consider 500,000, oh my god. Honestly, it feels more like a storybook in motion than a traditional animated film, but being critical here feels somewhat pointless, mainly because, one, I haven't seen the film, as I'm not exactly the target audience here. I'm guessing it does what it sets out to do, and that's fine. Was it worth $500,000 though? Was it? Really? I don't know. But then, it happened. In March of 2021, a Lebanese animated feature aimed at adults was released. And the best part? It was made available for free on YouTube for everyone to watch.
We didn't think of something much more than YouTube because it's free, everybody can watch. They decided to put it on YouTube to reach the bigger audience.
All that being said, let's talk about the film. The film opens up in the fictional country of Alephia, a high-tech surveillance state ruled by authoritarian forces. As the world's leading exporter of lithium, Alephia's immense wealth has granted its ruler, Aleph II, significant global power. Despite being one of the richest nations on Earth, Alephia, named after the first letter of the Arabic alphabet, is deeply divided. Massive walls separate the elites living in luxury from the rest of the population who are confined to slums. A young boy named Mhaya is suspected of treason and is being chased by authorities. He narrowly escapes and meets up with his friend Layla at her school. Together, they plan to flee the country. Before leaving, Mhaya defiantly spray paints a revolutionary slogan on a statue of Aleph II, which reads, "The letter Aleph is falling." Outraged, Aleph II demands the immediate capture of those responsible. Members of the Internal Security Service, including Major Majid, Captain Sumaya, and Deputy Fahmi, track down and arrest the two fugitives. It's only after their arrest that we discover that Layla is Majid's sister. Following a brutal interrogation, Mhaya is executed on live television. Though Majd manages to spare Layla, she ends up taking her own life. Seeking answers, Majd follows the lead to Dalal, Layla's schoolteacher. Through her, he uncovers a long-buried family secret. Years ago, Dalal and Majd's father were both members of the regime, yet secretly working to dismantle it from within. However, they were betrayed by Faris, Captain Sumia's father, leading to Majd's father's secret execution. This revelation leads Majd to join Dalal's cause, and take down Aleph and his regime once and for all. Produced by Spring Entertainment, a subsidiary of Spring Communications based in Paris with offices in London, Beirut, and Dubai, the film was the brainchild of CEO Rabia Swaidan. The company approached artist Jorj Abou Mhaya to direct the feature.
One day, it happened that I was in Paris and he called me with Marwan, the co-producer. And we sit down and we discussed the idea, and they told me they want to do like a feature film or a series. It happened just like that, and I was hesitant before. Of course, if you want to make it right, to make like stand out, like in the quality, in the storytelling, you have to have a lot of money. And then we discussed what we have to do so it won't cost a lot. You know, we started to draft it how this will look like, and we did a lot of brainstorming, and we almost came up with everything visually: storyboards, concept art, characters. Everything was set and done. Pre-production took almost 8 months to finish everything, and we were writing it simultaneously with Bassem, the screenwriter that worked with us. It was overwhelming in the beginning. Your first feature animation is not easy, you know.
The film was made in collaboration with a French animation studio called Malil Art Productions. Since regional Arabic dialects vary so widely, to make the film as accessible as possible to everyone across the Middle East, the voice acting was done in Fusha, aka Modern Standard Arabic.
سيدي، إنه مجرد شعار. هل نسيت أن الثورات تبدأ بشعار؟
This is the formal version of the language taught throughout the MENA region, and is commonly used in dubbing news broadcasts and official communications.
The first thing that comes to our mind was Fusha. Like when I watched Grandizer, they were all in Fusha because they were dubbed in Lebanon and they were distributed to all of the Middle East. That was why we went with it. I always wanted to recreate this feeling.
Personally, I dislike watching my movies in Fusha, simply because it makes the dialogue feel more theatrical rather than natural.
أنا لست مهتما بكل ما جرى لكوكب فينيتا من الدمار. هل سمعت؟
Also, gonna be honest, كشخص لبناني, I'm kind of tired of all our major movies being about war and revolution. I mean, can't we have one fantasy film? At least something that looks better than this?
Me being like the generation that was born during the war, we had nothing to do except to draw all the time. and watch sometimes, if we are lucky, if there is electricity, we can watch some animation like Treasure Island, Grandizer, and these classics that were broadcasted in the Middle East. After the Arab Spring, the Arab Spring was going on since 2011, even before. And there's nothing like in fiction or in art about it.
There's a lot I love and appreciate about this film. Its serious and dark tone, its mature themes that reflect the social realities of the region, and its commitment to treating animation as a legitimate medium of powerful storytelling. I especially like the art direction of the film, as the style and aesthetic feels like a comic book come to life. That said, the film does have its shortcomings. As we've discussed, animation is both time-consuming and expensive. Given that this project was created with limited resources and released for free on YouTube, the most apparent limitation lies in the animation quality and character movement. The film doesn't have the same fluidity as, say, a hand-drawn Disney production.
You have to think like the guys that does the manga. If you watch the anime series, the direction is so effective while using minimal animation. And I went with this kind of direction to make it doable. I didn't go for epic scenes, and I tried to avoid lip sync animation as much as possible so I can get the character to start talking and then we hear him and he's off screen and we look in another character. I put this from the beginning of the storyboard with the notes to economize on the heavy bulk of work.
In order to get this project made, many corners had to be cut, and a great deal of intentional planning and decision-making was required in pre-production to make it feasible. This explains why the film is significantly shorter than most animated features, as Alephia 2053 has a total runtime of just 1 hour, including the credits. Unfortunately, that short runtime impacts its narrative flow. The pacing feels rushed at times, making the plot come across as less of a story unfolding naturally, and more like a series of bullet points summarizing the larger narrative. This leads to some major moments feeling less impactful than they should have been. However, despite all that, the artistry behind the film still shines through, from the detailed world and character design to the moody atmosphere and tone, and the original epic score that elevates the dramatic moments and gives them a sense of grandeur. You see, to me, I don't view this as a standalone piece of entertainment, but as a conceptual pitch, a proof of concept showcasing the storytelling potential of Lebanese artists through the medium of animation. Okay, I know it feels like I'm talking smack about this movie by saying like this feature film is more like a concept video, but it's like a really good concept video, and I'd like to see you do better. Can you do better? Because if you can, please do. I'd love to see your art. Please share it with everybody. Don't just sit there and criticize things. I know that's what I'm doing, but that's because my greatest contribution to animation is making stick figures say fuck.
Yes! Yes! Oh, fuck!
Yeah?
Alephia 2053 sends a message to the world, especially to potential financiers, that people from the region care about animation and are eager to tell stories through the medium, and that there's a growing audience hungry for this kind of content. The very existence of this film got me excited about the possibility of seeing more animated projects emerge from the region. However, it's been nearly 4 years since its release, and unfortunately, not much new media has followed. A major reason for this is the widespread dispersal of Lebanese people, artists included.
There is a lot of people that are willing to invest big money on it, and there is a lot of pitches going on, but the talents already fled from the area. I am maybe one of the few that struggle to make like Arabic animation content with at least a good quality to stand out in the market. When big investors ask any Lebanese studio, they pitch him the idea, they will decline it. That's what's happening. We don't have the human resources. Like last year we did a short film. We were like 6 animators. To have a good budget for a short film, it took us 1 year. Can you imagine if you want to do like a feature film, how much like resources you need? That's the main problem.
The vast majority don't see viable opportunities within the country and often end up immigrating in search of a better future. In just the past 5 years, Lebanon has endured a revolution, a financial crisis, the COVID-19 pandemic, the Beirut port explosion, a war with Israel, and escalating geopolitical tensions. In such an environment, sustaining creative industries, let alone building an animation sector, is increasingly difficult. Yet, not hopeless. Despite the odds, many artists remain in Lebanon, continuing to create new stories and push forward their work. Even those who have left the country continue to pitch ideas and seek opportunities, hoping to bring creative projects and resources back with them. Lebanese people are nothing if not resilient. Okay, هلا صراحة, we're also very loud and angry most of the time, understandably, given everything. But there is also a deep, unspoken sadness carried by the elder generation, one they haven't been able to properly express. That unresolved pain often turns into more anger, which then trickles down to the younger generation, in turn many of whom cope with focusing on materialism and appearances as a quick dopamine fix, rather than, developing healthy coping mechanisms. But you know what that sounds like? Incredible themes in future films that you should support! Woo! Shout out to Jorj for agreeing to take part in this video. My name is Sami, and if you enjoyed what you saw and want to see more, make sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe.